Hello and happy Friday. Welcome to Boilermaker Lounge. I am Sam Springer, as always, joined by Grant Flora. Grant, we've had a little week off there. We didn't do a Tuesday show this week, but some scheduling got in the way. But now we're back at it.
Yeah, and we'll talk about this, I think, in a second, but relatively quiet on the news end for Purdue basketball. So not like there was a ton of groundbreaking topics to discuss anyway, but looking forward to a good show now, getting things rolling again.
I mean, we can talk about nothing all day, but
Yeah.
people don't necessarily want to listen to us talk about nothing. But yeah, you're right. Not a ton going on. There's some recruiting news, I guess, but like more like updates. Our buddy Dustin Schutte talked about a couple of players that Purdue's been has targeted, and with some news with that, a couple of Stephen Reynolds the third. He's leaving South Bend, Washington, heading to Dallas with his family, and that's a target that Matt Painter and the Boilermakers have looked at. But then there are a couple of others that they've extended offers to. Kevin Savage out of Marietta, Georgia. He's a 4-star guard, and Grant, I believe you said he was a little smaller of a guard, like 5'9" or 5'10", and then also 3-star center Isaiah Hill from Indianapolis. He was on campus for an unofficial visit, but both of those guys are members of the 2027 recruiting class. That's the thing about college, is you've always kind of got to keep your eye on a few years down the road as well.
Yeah, Savage is the one that I heard the most about, and I didn't hear much. I just heard more about him than the others, and yeah, he's definitely smaller, but he's a 4-star kid, and he's a point guard, and he's the kind of guy that, Purdue kind of goes after these smaller guys that don't seem to necessarily have the body type of an elite point guard, but they can turn them into something pretty good. If he could become a defensive threat where he's quick and can pressure and then distribute well and be a good offensive player as well. Like, that'd be really interesting to see what he could do. Even though 5'9", 5'10" kind of sounds a little scary, but yeah, he was really the only one, right? Like Braden Smith's 6 foot, 6'1", like
on a good day, I think.
Right. It's not to say that Matt Painter can't take shorter players and turn them into good players that can be All-Americans and whatnot. So yeah, it's I think he would be a nice pickup if they got him, but obviously these are very early stages in recruiting.
Well, and I would have to check with Dustin, but I'm pretty positive that Stephen Reynolds the third, I do believe, is part of the family that the Miss Basketball from this last year, I cannot remember her name, but her last name is Reynolds, and then the Purdue ladies had 2 Reynolds. They both hit the portal and transferred out. The Miss Basketball, she decommitted from Purdue, and it's because their dad took a position in Texas as an assistant coach. I forget which university that is, but I believe that's why Mr. Stephen Reynolds III is moving to Dallas, because I think he's part of that same family. So it's not necessarily he's moving to go to a better program. He's leaving because that's his family's moving to Dallas, and they felt it was the best thing for him. So to go with the family, and I guess that would be accurate, I think. But
yeah. So can't blame anybody for that.
No, not at all. But that's kind of the recruiting portion of today's episode. Not a lot. I mean, there's no solid news. It's all just kind of posturing for when those commits decide they're going to start committing, or those recruits could start committing. And so it's just kind of keeping us on the radar, or keeping the radar clear of what we're kind of going after in the future. But the meat and the potatoes of today's episode is we're going to evaluate the sophomore class of next year's roster for the Purdue Boilermakers. So all 4 of these gentlemen contributed in some way, and granted, I know, and we'll go over the 4 are CJ Cox, Gicarri Harris, Raleigh Burgess, and Daniel Jaconsen. All four of those contributed in some way, even if it's small. And obviously Jacobsen didn't hardly play last year. He broke his leg in the second game of the season, but you could see that he was going to be an integral piece of that team last year.
Yeah, I mean, he would have fit a lot of what they really could have used and solidified a lot of weaknesses they had last year.
Yeah.
And he's just a really talented player anyway, like the way he can score, the way he can stretch it out and defend. So definitely bringing him back next year, assuming he can stay healthy, will be really nice. But yeah, he's also in that limbo of like, okay, is he a freshman? Is he a sophomore? Right now, he's listed as a sophomore, which means they didn't redshirt him. To me, it seemed like that was the plan, was to redshirt him. So I'm not sure exactly what was going on there, but he's lumped in with that sophomore group right now for our purposes.
And I don't know the rulings or anything. I don't know if they have to a certain point decide whether or not they're going to redshirt. I don't know if that's even still a date later. Like maybe before the start of the season, they can say, hey, we redshirted him or whatever. I don't know those rules, but the fact remains is he's back again this year, whether he's a redshirt freshman or a sophomore. It's kind of one and the same. He was spent the whole year with the team on the sidelines. After, like I said, he broke his leg in the second game of the season. Excuse me. It was 1 minute into the second game. So he literally played 26 total minutes for the season. In those 26 minutes, he scored 13 points, 7 rebounds, 3 blocks. And that was all done in the first game against Texas A&M Corpus Christi. But I tell you, when it comes to 7-foot centers that Matt Painter has, he's fitting a different mold. He's 7'4", but he's only 230. Now that it's going to change. He's going to put on some weight, but he's a different breed of a 7-footer. He's not the prototypical, I guess, 7-footer that Matt Painter normally has.
Yeah, and I think it works really well for Purdue because we've seen it kind of in the past with like Matt Harms, but I like Daniel Jacobsen a lot better than Matt Harms because I feel like even though he doesn't have the weight on him yet, he's going to get it. And I think he's just to be a more solid big guy in the post, whereas Harms is more of like a rim runner, blocked some shots, didn't really stretch the floor that much. He knocked down a few threes, but was never really a threat from beyond the arc. And I really had higher expectations for Harms when he came in as an early freshman and sophomore. So I like Jacobsen's upside a little bit better. And I think, again, because he will come off the bench most likely at the start of this season, I'm working with the assumption that Oscar Clough will have the starting job at the beginning. I think he fits that nice role where he doesn't have to carry the load of the 5-piece in the middle, but he can come in. He can even play some 4 alongside Clough because he's a little bit quicker and can stretch the floor with the 3. So I'd like the way he fits into this team, and I'm really excited to see how he can develop, even though we didn't see him play all of last year, how he can take that leap from freshman to sophomore anyway.
Well, in the summer of 24, so last summer, he did play with USA Basketball U18 national team. He was a second-team All-Star, 5 honors with AmeriCup in Argentina, where he averaged 9.2 points, 7 rebounds, 3.2 blocks a game. Shot nearly 65% from the field, and he set a Team USA AmeriCup tournament record with 19 blocked shots. That tells you what he can do as a player. Just in his off season leading up to his freshman year, you could see that he's a little bit more. Like you said, he's more agile. Agile and athletic, more versatile than Clough. And it's not taking anything away from Clough. That's just his build. And Jacobsen's a little more of a sleek, smaller build guy. And he's going to add some weight, like you said. Absolutely, he's going to add some weight. But, and it says right now, he's going to enter the season 100% healthy and about 25 pounds heavier than last season. That's going to allow him to bang down in the blocks a lot more.
I I Jacobsen again. I think because he can learn from these guys, like he learned obviously from Chekhov and Ren, but really last year because they didn't have a huge centerpiece in the middle outside of Jacobsen, he was
Hmm.
going to be the one to take that role. And when he wasn't there, it was
Right.
like Caleb first. He wasn't really learning from anybody. I love the fact that he gets to learn from Clough, who has a very established game already with averaging 17 points a game and 12 rebounds or whatever it was at South Dakota State. I think that's going to be really good for Purdue throughout the course of the season, but for Jacobsen's career as a whole, where you can learn from a guy that already has been there and done that and is doing it in a way that Jacobsen doesn't necessarily do it himself, at least naturally. Like Clough is going to really be able to teach him how to use his feet, how to
Yeah.
get those hook shots and whatnot to go in ways that Jacobsen probably hasn't had to rely upon already because back in his pre-college games, he's obviously the tallest person, one of the better
Right.
big guys most of the time he played. So I really like that aspect to what's going to happen next season. I think it bodes well for obviously next season, but down the road.
Yeah, like exactly like you said, Clough's going to allow Jacobsen to work on an aspect of his game that he might not have had the ability to work on to the extent of where I think he can work on it this next season because back to the hoop, make that move to get the inside track to the hoop or get to the middle to where you can do a little baby hook shot, whatever type of thing. I mean, he's learned from TKR, I'm sure, on some things. But TKR is not a big man necessarily. He's not the prototypical guy back to the hoop into the post. Uh, he would many times come out of the post, and if he did, it was still a different type of post move. So I think Clough is going to be um, definitely going to be a big help to Jacobsen. And the one thing I was going to say is, when they first signed Clough and once he committed, I wasn't so sure. And I still, I guess I'm not 100% sure Clough is inked into that 5 spot yet. I think that it is a jump from South Dakota State to Purdue. If one thing Jacobsen has over Clough is he has 26 minutes of Big Ten or of experience with a Big Ten club. Now he played him against teams that South Dakota State probably was more likely to play, uh, but but I think you're probably right. I think Clough is probably going to be that starter with because you know what, now you can still take your time and getting Jacobsen a little bit more developed and a little bit more get his sea legs under him, so to speak, I guess.
Yeah, it'll definitely just be a battle as well, like for who gets those starting jobs. You're never just gonna give somebody a role before the season starts. We've
Right.
obviously talked
Right.
that to death with the cannon catching situation and all the other situations where Purdue has made decisions, given roles, started people you maybe didn't expect because those are the guys that played the best and earned the spots. And we're gonna see that with Jacobsen and Clough anyway. But the one thing we can be sure of is that both guys are gonna get better. They're gonna produce and whoever ends up starting will end up starting no matter what. It's going to be the best thing for Purdue, and then it'll be the best thing for those players as well.
Yeah, so I'm anxious and happy to see what kind of progress Jacobs, because you know what, even though he wasn't playing, I'm positive he was a sponge on that sideline, just trying to observe everything he could and be able to pick the brains. I mean, TKR wasn't on the bench long, but sit there and pick his brain on what he was doing. Caleb first, not the prototypical number 4 or number 5, but will still be able to tell him kind of how the Big Ten works, how those games how the flow works. So it'll be interesting to see his progression throughout the next season as well. And I think he's going to do some really, really nice things. But I honestly, with the addition of Clough, with Murphy to as well, not to the extent of taking minutes away, but necessarily maybe you play with the lineup a little bit to where you don't have to have Jacobsen in unless you feel like that's the best move at the time. But he's going to get some good minutes. I really do think he's going to get some good minutes.
Yeah, for sure. He's it, it, I think Clough and him probably end up splitting fairly evenly, but it could depend on matchups as well. So
Sure.
it's very early to speculate, but Jaconsen is going to play a significant role on the team, no doubt.
Yeah. Well, let's move on to the one of the other sophomores. We're going to talk about Raleigh Burgess now. He's coming in as a sophomore. Didn't play much at the end of the season. There was some rumor that maybe he had some shin splints, a severe case of shin splints, to where he wasn't able to participate in the last few games of the season. And honestly, I think that's probably why we saw more Will Berg at the end of the season, because Burgess just wasn't able to go. But not a bad season from Raleigh. We saw some decent things. He's out of Cincinnati, Ohio. So he's local-ish. But he didn't have a terrible freshman year. It just maybe wasn't what a lot of people expected from him. But I honestly, and I'll stop after this. It says in his bio, chose Purdue because it was a perfect fit of basketball and education. We just got done with Caleb First, who stuck around and easily could have went somewhere else, because he is a decent enough player. He could have gotten some minutes and some more minutes and some valuable minutes compared to his junior year, to his for that senior year. But he's going to be a doctor, so he went for the education. He stayed for the education, and I think he loved the program. Do you see this as a possible Caleb First-ish style of player with Raleigh?
Yeah, it's possible. I don't know what Burgess is majoring in, so I don't know if
But for it to be in the bio,
right,
it says that it's a perfect blend of basketball and education. That tells you he committed to Purdue not just because of what the basketball program was doing.
Yeah, I agree. I honestly, we'll have to see how things shake out again with how good the new players Purdue's bringing in end up being, how many players Purdue ends up feeling like it can use. I wouldn't be shocked if this ends up as a Raleigh Burgess redshirt year, honestly, because they flirted with that last year. He decided not to, and it worked out well because Jaconsen went down. But if they have the players this year, he might redshirt, because last year he did some good things for sure, but we saw a lot of weaknesses as well when he was in the game. Like defensively, I just didn't think he was quite ready yet to be able to compete with the bigs from the Big Ten. And offensively, he didn't get a whole lot into his game of creating offense. So I think he will develop a lot, just continuing to train and get better, and just like you would expect a sophomore to transition after a freshman year. But I wouldn't be surprised if they end up redshirting him this year just to save him, because they're going to have so many guys, and he's probably going to get pushed back a little bit with, like we've talked about, Clough, Jaconsen at the 5 spot, TKR, Murphy potentially playing the 4. You know, that's 4 guys right there that can soak up a lot of minutes. Burgess, there's just not going to be a whole lot there for him if those guys are as good as we think they're going to be.
Well, and Burgess 6'11", and you think about it, you've got TKR. He's a senior. He's going to be gone after this year. Clough, more than likely going to be gone after this year. I believe he's registered as a senior. Don't know about his eligibility, but I'm going to assume he's on one and done at Purdue. That opens the door for, be it a redshirt sophomore or a junior Raleigh Burgess and a junior Daniel Jaconsen as the front court for Purdue. And I'll tell you what, you throw that with Omer Meyer, what we kind of expect to get from him, a CJ Cox, a Gicarri Harris, we've got a pretty loaded, and you throw in Benter, you throw in Luke Ertl, who's committed for 26. You kind of got another reload. It's not a rebuild after next year, potentially.
Right. It all hinges on how well those guys develop. But I agree, they have good players that are going to stick around for a while, assuming they don't lose a lot to the portal, which could easily happen. But if they lose to the portal, they bring in more in the portal. So It's just kind of the process we're in now. But I totally agree. Burgess has a good future. Purdue has been very high on him. Like their coaches have
Yeah.
said they think he is going to be a good player. And if they think that, I think we can all trust that, because if anybody has an eye for talent, especially in the front court, it's Purdue.
Mm-hmm.
So I definitely think he has a good future. He's going to contribute to this program down the road. Next year, it'll be interesting to see where he fits into the rotation.
Yeah, and we're not speculating. We just think, I guess you could call it speculation, but whether or not he redshirts, but that is a possibility because if he's not going to get minutes, maybe you save that extra year of eligibility in case. People can leave for the NBA or leave school at any point, so it's not like. But if he needs 3 more years, or wants to stick around 3 more years, if you redshirt him next year, maybe he's around for 3 more years and can help the next class after that as well. But yeah, I think he's an exciting player because of the unknown factor of, okay, the coaches are really high on him. We haven't seen a ton from him, but if they're still high on him, that means he's got something there that we just haven't been able to uncover. It hasn't been uncovered yet.
Yeah, and I still feel like we saw flashes, like
Sure.
even just singular plays throughout the season that he did. He can shoot the ball. Like he didn't shoot great throughout the season, but we saw him make a few, and he looks like a kind of guy that when he gets some confidence and some consistency could be a threat from beyond the arc, and that's always nice to have in the front court these days. Plus, I think in the post he's going to be able to develop the ability to score. So I think he has the tools, or at least has the foundation for the tools. It's just developing that into a player that can play consistently and play good Big Ten basketball.
Yeah. Well, let's move on to the third of 4 sophomores. We're going to go to Gicarri Harris, son of Glenn Robinson, Purdue great from the mid 1990s. Yes, I went back to the 1900s, kids. But Gicarri Harris, this is the guy we saw multiple times. Grant, he made some really good athletic plays, but yet I never felt we really saw exactly what we are going to get down the road from Harris in the future.
Yeah, and it was even kind of hinted at that I thought he'd be the replacement for Lance Jones with his ability to defend and then contribute offensively with some of his shooting and those athletic plays like you talked about. We didn't quite get that last season, which you can't be too disappointed because he was a freshman.
Right.
But I do think he has that in him to be that type of a player. And like you said, we saw the flashes. And a lot of times it's what you see in freshmen. You see flashes their freshman year, and then they come back as a sophomore, and those flashes become consistent performances. And so if we get that from Gicarri Harris, even though he's coming off the bench, that'd be a really good sign for next year and down the road. But the great thing about it is he can still learn from the great backcourt Purdue has. He can work with guys like CJ Cox, who he's going to be playing with for 4 years, and he can just kind of work through that system. And right now, both he and CJ Cox seem really committed and dedicated to that system. And if they can buy into it, we've seen Matt Painter work the wonders time and time again over these past 5 to 10 years, especially.
Well, he is, like I said, the son of Glenn Robinson. His brother, I think it's Gelen. It's Gelen. He was a football player at Purdue who graduated in 2027. So he's got the pedigree, I guess, to say. He's got that just the athletic genes from the family that I can. People my age or even a little older can remember when Glenn Robinson was at Purdue. He's 6'8", and he could take on the one play that I will remember eternally is in the NCAA tournament when he dunked over 7'2" Greg Ostertag, and it wasn't like he got lucky. He threw it down. And so like that's kind of the athleticism that we're talking about is, His dad was very, very, very athletic, and didn't. We've talked to some people that talked about Glenn Robinson. He just, it was so smooth, and I think that's what I've seen from Gicarri those few times. It looks like, oh my goodness, how in the world did he make that play? And then you rewatch it and you're like, it didn't look like it even was an effort for him. And that's what Glenn was back when he played too, was he was very effortless. He was smooth. You kind of wondered if he could go harder, honestly. But you're sitting here watching him do these things and you're like, oh my goodness, I don't know how he could go harder. And I think that's what I'm seeing in Gicarri Harris in those, like you said, freshman glimpses, those glimpses of, or flashes of what he could be down the road.
That athleticism is really encouraging, especially because you look at the Purdue backcourt that we've had these last few years, Braden Smith, Fletcher Lawyer. As great as they've been, having size and athleticism has not been something that Purdue's had with those two guys. And it's worked out fine. They make up for it in other ways, but having some of that athleticism would be really nice, especially from a defensive standpoint. And this goes for CJ Cox as well, but I love what those two guys can do defensively. I actually think Gicarri Harris has more in the tank defensively. I didn't think we saw quite the lethal threat on the defensive end that we thought we might get from him. So that would be really exciting to see him continue to develop and get better in that area. But I think he is totally capable, that has that kind of ceiling. And then offensively, he's looked good too at times. He shot the ball much better at the end of last season than he did at the start. And it got to the point where he was one of the more consistent shooters on the team. I wanted him to take those shots if he was open. So, and sometimes with freshmen especially, like, that doesn't end up being the case, especially at the end of the season. So I'm really looking forward to what he and CJ can do. But for Gicarri especially, I think he has a really nice ceiling, like you've talked about with the pedigree and whatnot. So he and CJ Cox will play a huge role in the future of this team past the next season, but even with next season with that depth in the backcourt.
Well, and we'll talk more in depth about Cox here in just a couple of minutes, but like we've mentioned it multiple times, at least a couple of times that I can recall. The biggest jump is from freshman to sophomore in not talent, but in development. That's what I was looking for. And these guys are all of these guys are coming to their sophomore season from their true freshman season. So, like, I can totally see all of these guys, but with Gicarri Harris, maybe we see more consistent explosiveness, consistent, smooth, athletic moves that just nobody can really defend. Maybe, and I'm not trying to insinuate, I don't know anything, but seeing both Cox and Harris throughout their freshman year, maybe this is the time that Harris takes that starting spot away from Cox because of the development. I can't say that I know that guaranteed, but it just, like you said, we've seen some more things from Harris that makes us maybe think that he's going to be the better of the two. Not necessarily that we know it. It's just we kind of have seen those hints that maybe he is going to be better. Maybe this is the time where, and the great thing is they're having, it's a contest to see who gets that starting spot, because you got to throw Antoine West into it too.
Right, and that's assuming they don't put Omer Meyer there in that 3 spot either, which
Correct.
is another option. Some people really like that idea of having Meyer at 3 next to Fletch and Braden. So definitely really interesting to see how that goes. Gicarri Harris also started the first few games of his freshman season last year. It was Braden, Fletch, Gicarri, Berg, and TKR, and then Jaconsen took the 5 spot. It wasn't until the Alabama game, after the Alabama game, when they went small ball with TKR at the 5, and Gicarri Harris didn't start again after that, I don't think. So, but the point being, he was their starter up until then. CJ Cox didn't get flipped in until like midway through the season. So he definitely at one point was outplaying CJ Cox, at least in the eyes of Matt Painter, and it could easily happen again if he keeps kind of keeping up what we saw at the end of the season.
Yeah. Interesting to see where he comes in at. come October, November. But let's move to the last sophomore of the on the roster, CJ Cox. He was the starter for most of the season in that 3 spot. Didn't start the season that way. He moved his way, got his way into it, and hats off to him. He held on to it. I mean, that's not to say there wasn't a competition going on all year long. Now, does Matt Painter want to keep flip-flopping these guys out? And no, you want some consistency. But at the same time, he's not silly enough to say, well, CJ Cox, we've got you in there now. We're going to let you. He earned that, and there's a reason why he was a starter for most of the season. And, he had that huge game against Alabama that just really showed what he could be offensively with Purdue.
Yeah, I love his offense. Even his defense, he made some great plays, picked some pockets throughout the season that it's like, man, I love what he has in his game. His freshman year, I think, went better than what people expected it to.
Yeah.
Not that they didn't think he was going to be good, but he came in and made a real impact. He probably is the one that people would expect to start next year, assuming Omer Meyer doesn't take that 3 spot. Like, if you look at ESPN's way too early projected lineups, he's the one they have at the 3. I don't know if that's what'll end up happening. Again, between all the guys, anything can happen. But I think especially because of what he brings offensively as well as defensively, that gives him an advantage over a guy like Gicarri Harris, who we haven't seen be as much of a playmaker, I don't think, at least as consistently as CJ Cox. CJ Cox's ability to, pull up off the bounce and score and make a 3 or make the contested jump shot when he's feeling good. Like, those are things that I think have separated CJ Cox from Gicarri Harris, at least this past season. We'll see how it keeps going. But I love the shot-making ability of CJ Cox, and that's kind of why everyone sees his ceiling of being high and why everyone's loved him so much this past year.
Well, and you look at his splits, his shooting splits, 46.1% from the field, 39.8, almost 40% from three-point range, over 78% from the free throw line. That's what you're pointing at when you say he's got a better shot. Again, not damning Gicarri Harris at all, but this is what Purdue's got. Their cabinet is so full that they're trying to shove everything in and keep the doors closed. Literally, I mean, he went on a personal 9-0 run against Alabama in just his 4th game. He had, 16 points in the game against Auburn, which Purdue got ran out of the building after, at a certain point. But he had 16 there. He scored 23 against Nebraska, 9-11 for field goals, 5 of 7 from threes. He's got the spurt ability offensively to be a huge additive to it, but then you throw that defensive component into it, and yeah, I would expect Cox to be the starter.
I think if Fletcher Loyer hadn't been there this season, CJ Cox would have kind of had a similar season to what Fletcher did his freshman year, where he played a large role and was one of the better scorers in the team, except that CJ Cox also would have played better defense than Fletcher Loyer did, and he was more consistent through the end of the season, because Fletcher Loyer hit that wall in about mid-February and just never came back. And was
both.
Right. So you look at that and you're like, wow, we have a guy that's basically would have had as good of a year as Fletch if it weren't for Fletch still being on the team. And now he's going to come back as a sophomore and potentially be the 5th starter. And he's going to develop and potentially be a Fletcher Loyer caliber player, if not better, by the time he comes through to the end of his career. That's really exciting. When you look at that next to Gicarri Harris and Daniel Jaconsen, the guys we've already talked about. You're like, okay, this Purdue team's not going anywhere.
The nice one other thing is he scored 11 against McNeese in the second round win that Purdue had in Providence to take him to the Sweet 16. He averaged 18.6 minutes per game, so he got a lot of minutes. That's rotating through, but he's the starter, so rotating through with some other guys that come in that don't, they're taking minutes from him. but as a freshman, 18.6 minutes per game. Once we got to the Big Ten, he jumped up to almost 7 points a game, 3.5 rebounds, almost zero point 0.6 assists per game. So he's still learning that part of it, the distribution, but he averaged 21.5 minutes a game in Big Ten play. Matt Painter, I think that's the one thing that I really like about Matt Painter is he understands freshmen are going to make mistakes, but he also knows, okay, we're going to give them some autonomy to be able to go out and make those mistakes, because down the road, eventually you're going to get somebody. Not everybody's going to turn out like this, but eventually you're going to get somebody that makes the decisions that Braden Smith makes. And as a senior, you're not upset with those mistakes, that he makes, because more times than not, it's going to come out better. And I think CJ Cox benefited that a lot from having that Matt Painter seal of approval of, okay, you're a freshman, but I trust you.
Well, and talking about the distribution factor specifically, like it wasn't his job really to distribute. Right. Like Braden Smith's the guy with the ball in his hands, and he's the one creating everything. CJ Cox is supposed to catch the ball and shoot it, pretty much, or dribble it and then score. Like he's not supposed to be passing a whole lot. So the assist number doesn't worry me at all. I think if he needs to pass the ball, he can pass it. So, right. But yeah, I totally agree with what you said there too about just like his role and with Braden Smith and Fletcher Lawyer, and he's gonna grow, and when more is needed from him, he'll be ready to give it. And I don't think it will be too much of a letdown or a break in transition at all. I think he'll be ready for it when the time comes.
Well, it'll be interesting to see if he or Meyer runs the point when Smith does take a break. Now, do I think he's gonna? I don't think Braden Smith's gonna do what he did last year, to where he plays 3 or 4 games in a row where he doesn't take a break. I don't know, and maybe I'm completely wrong, but I think he probably found himself, and even though his last game against Houston was an amazing game, there has to be some realization that maybe I should have taken a few minutes, or I wish I could have maybe taken a few minutes, to where, the offense runs not without missing a beat, but, better than what it did whenever Smith had to go sit down or needed a break. But it'll be interesting to see if it's Cox or Meyer, depending on how those two progress. And honestly, I would say probably out of the chute, you're going to pencil in CJ Cox as the backup point guard, just because he's had a little bit of experience doing it, and Meyer gets a little bit of time to immerse himself. And then maybe by the end of the season, Meyer is the one that comes in and runs the point whenever Smith needs a break. But CJ Cox, to me, just like you said, and that's a very good point, is he didn't need to distribute. So 0.6 of an assist per game, it's not that big of a deal, because he didn't need to be distributing it 14 times for a bucket. He was the one giving Smith the assist because he was making his shots. So it'll be fun to see how this team, just the half of the team that we've talked about to this point. So the freshmen and the sophomores, that gets me really excited and pumped for not just next season, the seasons after next. And I'm not putting the cart before the horse and thinking, oh, what's it going to be like in 2 years? I am over the moon about what we could accomplish next season. But right now, we've talked about those players that will be here. Sure, more than likely will be here after next season.
Right. Yeah. As we talk about I guess not really any juniors, but when we get to the senior class, it'll be a little more focused on this next season, obviously, because that's all they have left. Right. But it just speaks to the program and the consistency of success that we've seen the past, even really, you look at the past 4-ish years, basically since COVID, and what this Purdue team's been able to do. Never been worse than a 4 seed. They've lost some upsets, obviously, in the tournament, but they've also made up for it with deep runs. And I think we're going to continue to see more of the deep runs and less of the shocking upsets as they continue to grow as a program. But again, it speaks a lot to that and the consistency, and we're going to see they just are able to sustain success despite the losses of big time players, some of the best players in Purdue history. I mean, to have the team they had, the season they had last year, even after an injury to a big guy, after they lost two-time reigning national champ or national
Yeah.
player of the year, I should say, and Zach
Yeah.
Edey. They're going to face a similar situation when they lose Braden Smith, Jacob and Wren, and Fletcher Lawyer next year. But I have faith that they will still be a strong team after that because of these younger guys and because of the way that they've been able to develop and piece together good teams regardless.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. CJ Cox wraps up our sophomore evaluation, class evaluation of next year's roster. And it's definitely the amount. I mean, this team from, let's go back 4 years, lost two lottery picks. And I'm not saying Braden Smith's going to be a lottery pick, but should be a first-round pick next year with his development in through. So in the course of 6 years, they're going to have lost 3 first-round draft picks to the NBA at some point. And the fact that isn't decimating is saying something about what the coaching staff, Matt Painter and the coaching staff, have put together in West Lafayette and built that culture. And you talked about, a lot of times, many times you see from freshmen is the flashes and stuff, unless you've got somebody like Cooper Flagg or these can't miss even Harper and Bailey or Ball. Which aces was at Rutgers? Was it Bailey?
Yeah, Bailey.
Okay, Baldwin was the one that was at Penn State. I always get those two screwed up. So Bailey and Harper, those guys are going to be great basketball players in the NBA. Well, let's say it this way: they're going to be lottery picks in the draft, and those are the ones that you expect all the time. It's the 3 and 4 stars that you get, like Matt Painter gets and develops, that turn into these guys. And that's the exciting part about these sophomores coming in, is they get another year to develop, and if they're not NBA ready there, they get another year, and so they've got a lot of time left in West Lafayette to get themselves to the point where maybe they're seeing NBA aspirations going forward. Just trust in the system, and I think they have.
Right, and you look at Braden Smith, honestly, we go back to him after his freshman season. I think people thought that he and Fletch were good, but they had a rough end of the season, and I don't think people thought NBA necessarily, at least not for Fletch. I mean, Fletch isn't necessarily in that conversation as much right now, but now Braden Smith is looking at being a first rounder next year. I don't think people saw that coming after his freshman season. No. And so people aren't talking about CJ Cox and Gicarri Harris having NBA capacity, but neither does Braden Smith at this point in his career. Now we're going to see them potentially have a shot to make those jumps and get into that conversation.
I think Braden Smith had those intentions. I don't think many people gave him that luxury of saying, "Yeah, you will be eventually." I think he's taken that. And we can talk about Braden Smith when we get to the senior evaluations, but he's turning into one of my favorite Boilermakers of all time. That's and I've been around a couple more times around the sun than you have, Grant. So, that brings us to the end of the Friday edition of Boilermaker Lounge. Got some really good conversations coming with some former basketball players that really excited to see to get those done, and those will be coming out in June. For those that don't know, I know Grant does, but at the beginning of June I'm going to Italy for 2 weeks, so therefore we got to get some of these recorded and cut up and be able to put out for that time because the 6-hour time difference. I don't think we can figure out how to record any Boilermaker lounges during that 2-week period, Grant. I just don't think we can do it.
Nah, I agree. It'll be tough.
But greatly appreciate you coming in and joining us on this Friday to talk about the sophomores of the Boilermaker roster for the 25-26 season. Grant, this is going to be a really exciting season, and the fact that we've only done 2 classes of this roster, and granted, like you said, I think there might be one junior on here somewhere, but I haven't looked through it all yet. But we have a lot to be excited about, especially when most of the starting lineup hasn't even been talked about yet.
Right. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us. And for Grant Flora, I'm Sam Sprunger. We'll see you on Tuesday.